I had no prior knowledge of the Watergate break-in.
The thing that's
I neither
so
took
appalling
part
to
in nor
me
knew about any of the
is that
subsequent
the president, when this
cover-up
whole
activities.
idea was suggested to him,
I neither
didn't in
authorized
righteous indignation
I wasn't there when it started. I never saw anyone pick the locks or wire the rooms in the dark. But I grew up with a chill running down my spine each time I reopened the Watergate files. Each time another name simply vanished from history. They say elections are built on trust, that justice shines, but behind closed doors, who decides who gets erased? How many files have been shredded? How many tapes wiped clean? How many warning calls were answered by silence? Is anyone truly safe? Can anyone name the ones pulling the strings without paying the price? I've heard stories of secret meetings, cash-stuffed envelopes sliding across polished tables, midnight warnings never written down. In America, sometimes justice is nothing but a thin coat of paint. Beneath it, swirling power, faces that never appear on camera, decisions never documented. Every chapter ends with another gap, one more voice silenced, one more piece of evidence disappeared, one more truth buried. I don't know who's next. Could be anyone. Could be me. Could be you. If one day you simply know too much. I used to believe in ballots, in televised debates, in lines of citizens waiting for hours outside polling stations, in purple-stained fingertips as promises between people and country. But with each passing year, that paint thins, the dust of doubt thickens, clinging to every number, every speech, every illusion of an untouchable democracy. Every election, the media puts on the show. Go vote, they say. Do your civic duty. Maps flashing red and blue like a national chessboard. Commentators playing God over swing states. But behind every screen shift, I ask, where does this data come from? Who controls the stream? Who decides which votes are counted and which simply vanish? I hear the stories. Ballots lost. Thousands of mail-in votes that never arrive. Poll workers threatened. Evidence buried under legal documents nobody reads. Behind the unity speeches, lawsuits wait. Lawyers crawl through loopholes. Counting machines run unchecked software. Leaked emails, edited recordings, anonymous clips flooding social media. Deleted, re-uploaded. New names, same accusations. The public follows, led by polls, by pundits, by talking heads who've likely never counted a real ballot in their lives. On election night, cities blaze with light. Reporters stand outside counting centers. Barricades go up. But the real decisions? They're made behind smaller doors, in rooms away from cameras, where each sheet of paper reviewed could become evidence or vanish forever. Sometimes security cameras lose signal. Entire boxes of ballots get misplaced, and no one speaks of them again. When the final results flash across screens, millions celebrate, but millions more sit silent, feeling that same cold crawl down their backs. Everyone's heard the rumors, the uncounted votes, the threatening letters, the poll workers who quit, the investigations that end quietly, buried in paperwork the public will never read. Trust isn't born, it's manufactured, behind layers of locks, screens, speeches, and a security apparatus nobody fully controls. Each election deepens the divide. Families fracture, friends unfriend, arguments over single posts. But beneath all of it, the coldest question remains: who really controls your vote? And if one day the curtain drops, will you still believe you ever had a choice? Or realize this was always a carefully rehearsed illusion, played for centuries to make you feel like you were choosing? Suspicion isn't a choice anymore, it's survival. Each election leaves deeper cracks, spreading into conversations, into dinner tables, into cautious whispers at family gatherings. I see my friends changing. Some fall silent. Some attack anyone who disagrees. Some stop voting, convinced the game was rigged long ago. I once thought only dictatorships made people fear power, made them fear being watched, fear speaking out. But here, in America, power doesn't need clubs or prisons. It just whispers, whatever you do, it it won't matter. That doubt seeps into your bloodstream, into your late-night keystrokes, into the messages you delete right after sending. I've read the stories. Witnesses vanishing, poll workers resigning overnight, journalists changing careers after short exposés. No one dares reference again. They say, America is the land of freedom. But perhaps its greatest freedom is the freedom to doubt, to fear, to fall silent. Some nights I watch the candidates smile on stage. The applause thunders, and I wonder, how much is real? How much is scripted, rehearsed, staged, controlled down to every breath? I know there are tapes that never saw daylight, evidence burned before trial, investigations closed with 2 words: case closed. The coldest thing here isn't winter, it's resignation. A nation that knows something's wrong and turns away. They speak of the American dream, but never its nightmares. The fear of being erased from voter rolls, from phone books, from the memories of those who once knew your name. I don't know how many more elections will pass before someone dares peel off the final layer of paint. But I do know, each cast ballot, each vanished witness, shakes this democracy a little more. And that chill, colder than any toy American winter, will haunt every word, every glance, every unanswered question for years to come. If someone asked me, what's the difference between trust and deception? I would say trust can be built on truth. Deception only needs people to grow indifferent, afraid, comfortable in silence, until no one dares to question anything anymore. And perhaps that is the real end of every power game in this country. No gunfire, no bloodshed, just a generation standing quietly, unsure who they ever voted for, unsure what they ever believed in, unsure if anyone tomorrow will still dare to speak. I've come to understand. Here, truth never dies loudly. It doesn't collapse amid shouting or public verdicts. It wears down. Through quiet conversations, forgotten headlines, lawsuits that stretch on until silence swallows them whole. Power in America doesn't need to threaten you openly. It only needs to create enough fog, so no one feels certain about anything anymore. Sometimes I think the only thing that truly exists is the fear of being left behind, forgotten alongside secrets no one dares name. I still vote, still watch the news, still listen to speeches, to promises from candidates. But beneath it all, I know I've grown distant from hope, from the faith generations before me once held as obvious. Sometimes I glance around, at the cafe, on the subway, across the campus. How many around me think the same? How many are tired? How many have grown so cold that emotion itself has become a form of self-defense? This cold isn't from climate. It's the cold of a society that has learned anything certain can turn to dust overnight because of a deleted recording, a vanished witness, an investigation closed with insufficient evidence. It's the cold of acceptance that here, every ideal can be sold, every story rewritten if it no longer fits the script of power. Few will remember a recount, a contested election, a scandal buried quietly. But I know these scars keep spreading. Every child born will grow up wondering, do I really have a choice? And if no one answers, if everyone remains silent, then one day, even that question won't exist anymore. That is when everything truly ends. Not by coup, not by riot, but by a generation convincing itself, here, it's better not to ask too much. I don't know what America's future holds, but I know this. As long as anyone still feels the cold I feel now, the con continues. Power needs only wait for another abandoned vote, for one more voice smothered beneath the weight of endless silence. Some nights I sit alone in the dark. Outside the window, sirens fade into the distance. The city glows as if everything's fine, but I know, beneath that glow, too much has changed. Each election brings new faces, new slogans, but the cold never leaves. I wonder, When will America stop shivering at the word scandal? When will people stop whispering about missing ballots, midnight threats, investigations quietly buried? Maybe never. One thing is clear. The fear of power here isn't the fear of running. It's the fear of facing truth. The fear that even if you know, nothing will change. I understand now why more people fall silent, why debates grow fewer, why families avoid politics at dinner tables. The cold slips into every gap, turning friends into strangers, turning questioners into problems, turning a whole society into a crowd, each suspicious of the next. Maybe that's the greatest victory of manipulation. Not crushing truth with violence, but with collective exhaustion. So everyone willingly turns from doubt, willingly forgets. Years from now, there will be new Watergates, new investigations, new elections drowned in controversy. But I know, the cold of silence, the erosion of democracy through compromise and fear, will persist, even when no one remembers the last time they truly believed in a ballot, a promise, or this country's future. And I remind myself, if I still feel the cold, at least I know I'm alive. But I also know, a few more generations of silence and America will no longer recognize when that cold finally turns into total darkness. And then I realize, this cold didn't arrive suddenly. It began with the smallest things. A skipped question in civics class, averted eyes when missing ballots are mentioned, changed topics when power and manipulation come up. Little by little, each generation learns new skills. The skill of silence, the skill of suspicion, the skill of survival, by revealing nothing that might bring trouble. I grew up in schools preaching freedom, the right to vote, the right to speak, the right to question. But even those lessons felt like empty rituals. No one truly believed them. No one dared to practice them fully. Teachers mention Watergate in neutral tones. Students jot notes just to pass exams. No one discusses those who spoke up and vanished. No one dissects who manipulated power, or who truly controls the game. I remember family dinners, parents speaking in low voices about elections. It's complicated. Don't ask too much. About acquaintances who once entered politics and were never seen again. My friends. Some cling to faith that everything's fine. Some chuckle. Voting's just for show. No one really controls it anyway. Debates fade. In their place, private groups, safe circles, where people share only with those who think the same, who fear the same, who whisper, "I know, but let's keep it to ourselves." Many nights I read through old cases, and I keep seeing the same pattern. Witnesses vanish, evidence fabricated, media controlled, investigations quietly buried for the sake of national interest. Not because America is weak, but because America has mastered crisis management through silence, by shoving every problem into layers of fog labeled secrets worth protecting, fears greater than truth itself. The real cold settles in when an entire nation trains itself not to believe anything that hasn't been pre-approved. Becoming good Americans means repeating headlines, never questioning, never stepping back, never digging deeper. That cold kills dialogue, kills the hunger for truth. Eventually, it kills the meaning of democracy itself. I wonder, how many children will grow up never seeing the naked face of truth? How many people will keep voting just to complete a ritual without hope? When will this society finally face the cold that's already rooted in every family, every community, every ballot dropped into the box with one faint hope? Maybe this time will be different. Maybe I'll never get that answer. But each time I think of Watergate, of cold election nights, of names erased from records, I remind myself, if no one wants to ask, if everyone stands aside, this con will never end. And that cold will be all that's left in America's memory. Looking back at American history, there's never been a shortage of bold speeches about freedom, transparency, and the people overseeing power. Presidents step up to the podium, promising that America will never stray from democracy. But the more I hear, the more each promise feels like thin ice floating above deep, untold secrets. They say, in America, if something goes wrong, the press will expose it, the courts will deliver justice, the people will march for the truth. But the truth is colder than that. The press has its limits, the limits of sponsors, of career safety, of phone calls politely suggesting, choose another topic. The courts have limits, files that never see daylight, testimonies edited, witnesses who, at the last minute, withdraw for personal reasons. I've sat through scandals unfolding on TV, assassinations, abuses of power, contested elections, every time thinking, this time will be different. This time, justice will speak. But the endings are always the same. A few scapegoats named, a few sentences read out amid tears and applause. Then everything fades. No one remembers how it began, or how clear evidence disappeared overnight. The longer I live in America, the colder I feel when hearing the word investigation. Investigations aren't for justice. They're a way to normalize forgetting, to make people believe they're still in control, when the truth was already edited, distorted, buried, long before the case even started. Everyone knows, but everyone tells themselves, it doesn't affect me, just keep living. That's why every election season, I find myself standing among a quiet crowd, eyes filled with suspicion, whispers spreading rumors, missing ballots, manipulated voting machines, coincidental technical errors. No one fully believes, no one fully denies. The whole country acting out a play audience and actors both knowing how it ends. And as always, every crack is plastered over with silence. Those who ask too much get labeled extremist, conspiracist, unpatriotic. Even the once trusting learn to survive by pretending. I didn't see. I don't know. I don't remember. Every day, I see young people raised in this environment, tech-savvy, careful to avoid sensitive topics, skilled at dodging, knowing when to speak up and when to step back. But in their eyes, I no longer see hope for change, for justice, for a future they believe they can shape. The real cold comes when America loses its ability to self-doubt, when the question, who really holds the power, that no longer gets asked. When each election becomes a test, how much more can society endure? How numb have we grown to the deception? Maybe that's the final stage of every political con. Not instant despair, but generational adaptation to the cold until everyone believes. This is normal. This is freedom. This is democracy. I wonder if America ever has to pay for its silence, for its fake elections, for its forgotten Watergates. What will that price be? A great nation doesn't collapse overnight in riots. It dissolves gradually, piece by piece, belief by belief, dream by dream, each ballot dropping like a stone into the riverbed, silent, unmourned, forgotten. I think often about the price of forgetting, not just erased names, not just lost ballots or stalled investigations, but an entire culture teaching itself how to coexist with lies, how to stay silent about what everyone sees but no one dares name. Maybe that's the ultimate punishment power deals to democracy, turning everyone into silent accomplices, making skepticism the default, letting fear seep into the bloodstream so deeply no one remembers when they changed. Every time I hear Watergate, I think of millions like me, sitting before their screens, chilled to the bone, without knowing why. That cold isn't just disorientation. It's realizing there's no one left to lean on, no one willing to bear witness, no one patient enough to follow the story where it demands to go. Scandals fade. Investigative reports end with, "We will continue to monitor." But no one returns. No one follows up. No one wants to touch it again. Americans have grown skilled at sidestepping truth, at staying safe, at filtering information to fit their comfort, at fearing honest debates. Safety is prioritized over truth. False peace is preferred over uneasy questions. Ballots become procedures. Elections become guessing games. The news becomes background noise for a society that stopped listening. I think of children growing up never knowing what it feels like to vote with real belief, never daring to ask why their vote wasn't counted, why their parents' friends disappeared from public life over dissenting opinions, why adults lower their voices whenever politics come up. That cold grows with each generation, spreading quietly from dinner tables to classrooms, from social media into the subconscious. Many still take pride in America, in the revolutions that changed the world, in values of freedom built on sweat and blood. But I wonder, how much longer before those values become nothing more than slogans in textbooks, heritage recited without true reverence? How long before people simply accept that power always wins, not by open repression, but by convincing everyone that silence is the safest choice? And how long before truth fully disappears from stories, from collective memory, from every dream of a truly free America? I have no answers. Maybe I never will. But every time I think of Watergate, of mysterious deaths, hidden evidence, silenced voices, the cold sinks deeper, not just in this room, but into the bones of America's democracy, a system we once believed was unbreakable. And I know, if no one has the courage to keep the fire of doubt alive, to defend truth at any cost, then one day, all that will remain is an endless silence. Colder, heavier, emptier than any winter this country has ever known. Sometimes I wonder, does anyone even remember what Watergate was? Beyond a name in school books, a tired debate topic on TV, today's younger generations grow up surrounded by newer scandals, never-ending investigations, elections drenched in fraud accusations, fake news, smear campaigns, staged like carefully scripted TV dramas. This cold isn't just Watergate's anymore. It's the default pulse of American power. Every time we ask, who really controls everything? And am I even important enough for any of this to be fair, transparent, honest? Or am I just another powerless spectator watching a pre-written game? I often reflect on the meaning of a vote in a society where doubt is instinct. That ballot may weigh like gold for those who believe it changes the future. But for those who've seen ballots lost, forged, or voided with a single technical error, it feels as light as scrap paper. Voters line up. They laugh. They debate the future. But deep down, how many still believe tomorrow's results are real and not long predetermined by hands they've never seen? I recall stories of witnesses vanishing, stolen tapes, critical evidence quietly forgotten, coincidental deaths, suicide notes never questioned, warning calls permanently disconnected. Americans learn to trust the media's power, but media itself often becomes the perfect tool for manipulators. They can expose a politician. They can also bury a major scandal with a few small headlines, a hotter news cycle, a fresh crisis to distract attention. That cold becomes the steady rhythm of society. Anyone can be erased for a wrong statement, a misinterpreted post, a doctored clip with no clear source. Freedom shrinks, not through violence, but through exhaustion, fatigue, and normalization of deception woven into daily life. Sometimes I want to believe it can change, that one day someone will expose everything, unseal files, name names, return true meaning to every citizen's vote and voice. But as I think of the decades after Watergate, of so many scandals lost to time, the cold only grows, thicker, quieter, spreading into streets, rooms, and every conversation carefully avoiding America's darkest corners. Maybe I'm too pessimistic, but I know I'm not alone. There may be more investigations, more voices willing to speak, but truth here always demands a steep price. Careers, reputation, personal freedom, sometimes life itself. And as long as silence remains the safest armor, power will continue twisting rules, bending justice, turning every promise of fairness into invisible winds no one sees, no one names. I sit here in modern America and realize technology may evolve, media may change, laws may adapt, but the cold of power, the darkness of manipulation and silence, it never leaves, never allows anyone full comfort in the words we proudly repeat: freedom, justice, democracy. I once asked, in a country obsessed with truth and justice, why do so many people simply vanish? Not just Watergate. Every scandal seems to carry its list of witnesses, once promised protection, once brave enough to speak, then quietly disappearing from public life. American press once covered them, key sources, critical insiders. But later, no one knows where they went. Dead? Alive? Still in the country? No one answers. I've read hundreds of articles, combed through countless reports, spoken to those who once worked around Watergate. The pattern never changes. Witnesses disappear, not like action films, but quietly erased, off the air, off contact lists, off public memory, as if they never existed. Some transfer overseas. Some resign for personal reasons. Some vanish after a late-night call never seen again. Apartments emptied. Jobs handed off to replacements. Social media accounts left inactive. Sometimes all that remains is an old ID photo gathering dust, their presence wiped completely. I asked investigators, "Do you ever question it?" They just looked at me, silent, shrugging, as if they too have learned to forget. Statistics show rising numbers, witnesses withdrawing, rescinding testimony, requesting protection. I've tried contacting some Watergate witnesses. Emails bounced, phones disconnected, homes sold to strangers unaware of previous tenants. I read files on those who planned to testify, who suddenly met with accidents, unexpected deaths, psychiatric treatment, random muggings, none of which led to any clear conclusion. Each missing name cuts another slice of truth out of society's memory. I feel the cold when I think of those once confident enough to stand before cameras, to promise they'd reveal everything, only to vanish within weeks. I once thought only dictatorships erased witnesses, but in America, it's done with more precision, more legality, more chilling efficiency. No public shootings, no brutal abductions, just systematic erasure. Removed from files, absent from conversations, names struck from every list. What remains are gaps in the timeline, unfinished testimonies, half-written headlines. Some deaths appear routine, perfectly timed before court dates. Some disappearances go entirely uninvestigated. No one wants to revisit them. I see it in the eyes of veteran journalists. Dig too deep, and you invite trouble. Americans have learned to adjust to these disappearances. First comes surprise, then resignation, finally indifference. That's why scandals like Watergate pass without anyone truly knowing the full story. Witnesses are the first to be swallowed, not by mafia, not by men in black, but by a power system that buries bodies under layers of procedures, contracts, medical records, real estate transfers, legal entanglements, and endless personal reasons. I've often asked myself, if one day I were a witness, would I disappear too? I don't know. But here, truth is never protected. Only the powerful protect themselves. For everyone else, it's just a matter of time before being erased from collective memory. This cold, I believe, is far more terrifying than any silencing gunshot, because it trains an entire society to grow comfortable with vanishing until no one has the courage to search for traces anymore. I once believed that contract killings and cover-up murders in America were tabloid fiction, the work of conspiracy theorists. But the deeper I read into the major scandals, the more chilling patterns emerged, ones no one dares to voice aloud. Some deaths occur at just the right moment, to just the right person, at just the right time. A witness headed to trial suddenly dies in a car crash. An investigative journalist is found suicided in a hotel room. An internal official suffers a heart attack right before meeting federal prosecutors. At first, people speculate. Then, it's buried beneath dry conclusions. No sign of foul play. Natural causes. Further investigation yielded no results. I started to track the pattern and saw it repeat like a purification ritual of American power. Anyone who touches secrets too long, crosses the line, or threatens to expose major players eventually faces accidents, personal issues, or simply vanishes from all public records. What's more terrifying, it happens so smoothly it feels almost reasonable. No evidence, no accusers, no follow-up investigations. Even family members choose silence, too afraid to demand answers. I once thought fear of death was for cowards. But when I see the growing list of those who once spoke up, only to go permanently silent, I realize, here, everyone knows fear. Some die after a warning call. Some drown in private pools, days after releasing confidential files. Some are found overdosed despite being healthy, with no medical history. These cases remain closed, because here, certain deaths exist only to remind the rest. Don't cross the line. The coldest thing isn't the bodies, it's the silence surrounding them. No one speaks, no one takes responsibility, no one investigates further. Some say, it's coincidence. But what kind of coincidence happens at the right time, to the right person, leaving just the right gap in the timeline? Enough for everyone to understand, but not enough for anyone to dare reopen. That's not coincidence. That's the unwritten rule of power. I've heard of murders disguised as accidents, snipers firing in broad daylight, labeled personal violence. Witnesses warned, keep your mouth shut if you want to live in peace. Fear seeps into the bone. Once proud voices become silent ghosts, whispers traded only in empty bars, or among those who flee America altogether. When people ask me, are there really silencing murders in America? I stay quiet. No one can confirm. No one has the evidence. But everyone knows inside. Truth often costs blood, and that blood always spills at the perfect moment, so no one dares ask again. That's why here, those holding real power always smile calmly, and those who try to tell the full story never live long enough to finish. I once believed in American journalism, in haunting documentaries, multi-part investigations, journalists standing before courthouses in winter snow, delivering the truth to the nation. They were heroes, or so I thought. But the more I read, the more I saw. Media here is not just a bridge to truth, but the most sophisticated instrument of American power. The press can turn anyone into a hero overnight. It can also destroy entire lives with a single sensational headline and a cropped photo. I've seen investigations make front pages, shake Congress, and then, as money and power shift hands, those same outlets quietly bury the evidence, downgrade the truth to a sidebar, or label it ridiculous conspiracy. Some stories are celebrated as victories for democracy, but as soon as a hotter story breaks, everything sinks. Sometimes I wonder, where does justice really live here? In courtrooms, on front pages, or inside corporate media boardrooms, where every word, every image passes silent vetting? I've tried to trace who truly controls the major outlets, shareholders, parent corporations, investment funds, all connected to political pipelines, financial lobbies, and power brokers. Even the best journalists face limits, writing what's permitted, investigating just far enough to stay safe, always ready to step back when orders come from above. I've heard many stories of reporters suspended after airing sensitive reports, of articles erased without a trace, of investigations canceled for lack of funding. Some still say, freedom of the press is America's pillar. But what kind of freedom when every piece of information passes through countless filters of power? When any evidence can be reversed with a single phone call? I've watched people be convicted by media before ever setting foot in court. And when the truth finally emerged, no one corrected the headlines. No one apologized. No one took responsibility for the mud they flung at an entire life. But I've also seen major scandals ignored, whether out of fear, out of money, or because an invisible hand decided the matter was over. The cold of American media isn't in false reports. It's in how they make society believe it's hearing the truth, while carefully selected fragments are shown, and the rest buried forever. That's why, whenever I read news of a major case, I no longer ask, who's right? Who's wrong? I ask, who benefits? Who decided which stories aired? Which stories vanished? Who's steering public opinion? Am I an audience, or just another pawn in a game whose outcome true power knows? This is cold, not of winter, but of a society that's stopped questioning justice, grown comfortable with half-truths, allowing media to lead them wherever power wants. And at some point, when no one cares to separate real from fake, justice becomes nothing but an empty name, scrolling across a phone screen, unnoticed, unremembered, unwanted. I used to laugh at conspiracy theories about the deep state. As a child, I thought, mafia politics? Here, in America. But the longer I live, the deeper I read, the more that shadow feels real. It doesn't wear black cloaks, doesn't meet in secret basements, but it exists in every classified note, every major contract, every dollar stream flowing through election campaigns. I tried tracing major decisions, never finding a clear name responsible. Who drafts the first version of laws? Who selects candidates for sudden promotions or removals? Who drops the first stone into every new media storm? In America, shadow power needs no guns. It lives inside servers, lobby networks, non-profits whose faces are public, but whose insides no one truly sees. Some names never appear on TV. No ballots elect them. No hearings question them. No one really knows what they control. Yet with every major shakeup, it's still the same few giving silent orders, the same hands redrawing the rules. I've read reports on secret lobbying, anonymous bank accounts, dark money flowing from Congress halls to corporate lounges. Often, I look at senior officials, seeing the same pattern. Members from identical organizations, board seats at giant corporations, graduates of the same elite schools. It's not coincidence. It's network layer upon layer of relationships where power simply shifts hands, but never leaves its circles. I ask, how many US presidents truly control their own fates? How many national policies reflect voters' will? And how many are shaped over cocktail parties, private meetings, and after-hours phone calls? Some say the deep state is mere conspiracy to erode trust in government. But history shows mysterious deaths, perfectly timed power shifts, overnight policy flips, leaked stories designed to distract. Nothing is random. The coldest part? It's all legal, all proper. Signed, stamped, filed as internal circulation. No one accountable in the end. I look around. Everyone believes they live under transparent democracy, but I know. Deep beneath, every ballot, every headline, every verdict is shaped by deals struck long before. It's the most paralyzing feeling I've ever known. knowing anyone can become president, senator, journalist, activist. But real power never belongs to the public, and I know. Even speaking these words is enough to be branded extremist, blurred by oceans of fake news, buried beneath mockery. Or at worst, to disappear like so many troublesome witnesses. The deep state here isn't entertainment. It's America's coldest shadow. The more you deny it, the deeper it spreads, tightening around every power tier, every chance for change, every dream of true justice. I used to scoff when people spoke of black hands behind elections. I believed everything was tightly monitored. That voter fraud was just sore loser rhetoric. But the more I listen, live, read into every case, every anonymous testimony, my smile fades. Behind every election cycle, every ballot, every live update on TV are undercurrents no outsider fully sees. I've read hundreds of investigations into voting system loopholes, into software companies controlled by financial interests, into local election offices with histories of last-minute result changes. No one explains. I've seen camera feeds lose signal at the worst moments, vote counters threatened, paid misinformation campaigns, mysterious financiers pouring money into battleground states, then vanishing into the dark. Some say America is the model of democracy. All I see is a carefully staged show, candidates chosen early, opponents destroyed through endless leaks, smear campaigns spreading like viruses, all falling silent once the curtain drops. Mail-in ballots vanish, lawsuits withdrawn or delayed until no one has patience left. In some elections, public opinion is manipulated so precisely that few realize they've been herded exactly where needed. Anyone who questions is labeled conspiracist, traitor, unproven. I'm not saying everything is rigged. I'm not saying every election is fully manipulated, but I know each loophole left unchecked is one more opening for shadow power to slip in, one more reason for citizens to lose faith in their own system. Every silenced witness, every buried lawsuit is a cold reminder. Democracy only survives if someone dares to keep it alive. I've seen smear campaigns framing opponents as national threats. I've heard anonymous threats made to candidates and their families. I've read of secret funds funneled into front groups labeled election advocacy, with origins no one can trace. So much happens in the shadows. Every election cycle is only the tip of an iceberg. And I understand. Conspiracy theories thrive here, not because Americans are gullible, but because this very system creates too many gaps, too many mysteries, too many chilling coincidences no one can explain. When trust grows as thin as ice, any event becomes a conspiracy. Every decision feels orchestrated. Every outcome draws suspicion. Even if it's fair, if one day everything is exposed, how will America respond? With rage? Despair? Or just more silence? Or is this simply an endless play, where voters are extras, and real power stays behind the curtain, coldly pulling every string as it always has? After all these years, what has America truly learned from these seasons of doubt? From Watergate, to media manipulation, to vanishing witnesses, to the cold rule of deep state networks? I don't expect a neat answer. I only want to hold up a mirror to myself, to this society, and ask, how deep has this cold truly seeped? Every day, I see warning signs. A younger generation uninterested in voting, families avoiding politics at dinner tables, friendships dissolving over arguments, not over truth itself, but over versions of truth hand-picked by media and power. Modern America feels like a gathering of shadows, each person afraid of being deceived, each choosing self-protection through doubt, each selecting their own safe tent of information to believe until death. Freedom, democracy, justice. The words still echo, still printed on newspapers, still mounted on government walls, but they ring hollow now. Cold. I remind myself, don't trust democracy's shiny paint. Real democracy demands people willing to testify, to risk their safety to speak, to be attacked, isolated, and silenced by a society that prefers comfort over confrontation. Sometimes I wonder, if a new Watergate broke tomorrow, would anyone have the courage to stand up? Or would everyone simply bow their heads, shrug, and continue living inside the frozen shell of fear, suspicion, and unspoken power? America was once the world's symbol of hope and freedom, but every symbol can rot from within if no one dares maintain it, defend it, or guard its foundations. The biggest lesson: all power loves the dark. Every democracy can quietly die in silence. And if we grow too used to the cold, one day no one will notice when that cold becomes permanent ice. I don't expect to change anyone's mind. I don't ask you to rally in the streets or shout online or become a political hero. But I do ask you to remember, here in America, every death of truth begins with silence. I've seen too many stories buried because no one dared ask one more question. No one dared testify. No one wanted to become the next target. This silence kills democracy. Not with gunfire, but with millions of silent nods, millions of turned heads, millions of fingers clicking ignore on everything outside their own lives. Maybe today you think, this doesn't affect me. Let me live. But as each person looks away, as fear grows one by one, eventually no one will be left to ask, who really decides how we live? I once believed someone else would speak for me, that systems would self-correct, that one more election would fix it. But you see it now. Each election only adds new layers of ice, widening the distance between power and people, letting the cold soak deeper into every cell of society. I'm not a revolutionary. I hold no illusions about lone voices toppling power. But I know one thing for certain. If you stay silent, you become part of the cold. If everyone stays silent, there will be no more Watergates to investigate, no ballots left to count, no truths left to expose. When everyone falls silent, power wins completely. So if you still feel cold reading these words, if you still flinch thinking of another election season, if you still carry even a flicker of doubt, of unease about justice, hold on to it. Question. Doubt. Pass this story along, even if only whispered over coffee, even if just a forgotten social media post, even if only as a reminder to yourself. Truth lives only if someone keeps it breathing. Sometimes, one voice breaking the silence isn't enough to crack the ice. But if everyone chooses silence, every fraud, every corrupt power, every crime will repeat. Quietly, coldly, forever unseen, uncared for, and unnamed. I've said it before, don't stay silent. Don't let America freeze to death by its own cold.